Hello, everyone. It's the Historical Gamer. You can call me Matt, and I'm here today with Jean, the Strategy Wargamer, for episode 17 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. And today we're going to nerd out a little bit with some Battlestar Galactica. At least I think that's what we're going to talk about, unless you've got anything else going on today, Jean.
No, not much. I figure since Battlestar Galactica is coming out on Thursday, I think it's the 31st, right? Thursday on the 31st. I figure we donate the whole episode to one of the biggest games of the year, if not the decade.
Whoa, the decade? Really? You're gonna go that far?
I'm going there.
Okay. So there's nothing else going on in your world. You are ready. Your rig is ready to Battlestar Galactica.
Gosh, don't. So I'm already on my second beer because of that daggone rig. So I don't know if so
only
some
two
of the
beers.
listeners...
You can't be that bad.
Well, so over the weekend I stopped my Battlestar Galactica series, and I said, all right, listen, I'm going to get an external GPU, external graphics rig, and if you guys are not familiar with it, it's basically a case that has a graphics card in it. And when you hook it up to a laptop, it's supposed to be able to max out any game. I mean, you're going to see like pores on, your characters' faces or the most vibrant explosions known to man on your computer. And so I got like a really good graphics card, everything. Got it Sunday, and I set it up. And there were a couple of hiccups at first, and I'm like, okay, I plug it in, and Windows didn't recognize it. I'm like, all right, well, I probably have to update some stuff. So I did stuff like that. So I noticed I started around like 2 p.m. And around like 11 p.m., close to midnight, I realized, all right, there's a problem here. It's been like literally 9-10 hours later, and issues have risen. And so overall, cut the long story short, I had a delete Windows, reinstall Windows, delete Windows again, reinstall Windows, and then delete Windows again and reinstall Windows for a third time, and it still didn't work. So I figure, all right, if I can't get it to play Battlestar Galactica, at least maybe I could play some Mac OS games, because there's some games that are, available for Mac as well as Windows, like Europa is another one, Hearts of Iron, games that we've talked about in the past. I figure if I can max out those games, that it'll be worth the extravagant investment that I've made on that purchase. So I put it into Mac OS, and I duplicated numerous versions of Mac OS, and I did so much stuff, and I realized after 3 days of heavy work that I think the graphics card or the piece of the rig, whatever casing that I got, is broken. So after 3 days, I've am done, and I kind of repackaged everything in. I called Amazon this evening. I was like, listen, I'm sending all this crap back to you. Send me replacements. And so hopefully, I'm hoping by this weekend, I'll have a replacement. So unfortunately, my review for Battlestar Galactica, which is going to go up on Thursday, is not going to be in the highest graphical settings. It's going to be, it's going to be a little bit subpar, but it'll still be good.
I would empathize with you, except for the fact that I have no fucking clue what a external graphics card is. I know you say it's this little, like a USB plug-in or something for a graphics card, but that just seems so foreign to me. To me, it sounds like maybe the machine you purchased wasn't the right one.
Oh, you mean a laptop?
Or maybe Apple. I don't know.
I could tell you. I mean, everybody that I saw on YouTube, because I bought my purchase based upon like people's graphics unit off YouTube, and none of them had problems. So I'm guessing it's just like maybe they sent me a defective product. But basically, in short, for our listeners, external graphics card is it literally it doesn't go over YouTube. It goes over a new type of technology called Thunderbolt 3, and it's a very quick throughput. So basically, when you plug in this little cable that goes to your laptop to this big monstrous casing that has this big card inside that has a whopping big fan. It's supposed to augment all the graphics.
Huge.
Quoting Donald Trump, yeah, it's gonna be huge. So yeah, it's hopefully by this weekend I'll be able to play Battlestar Galactica on ultra settings, and so everybody that sees those videos will be like, "Holy crap! I need to get me a gaming rig." Kind of like Jeans, or you have a gaming rig. You have a pretty good gaming rig, right? You probably max out Battlestar on ultra settings.
Yeah, the graphics card isn't that phenomenal. The CPU is, but I guess that's interesting because I've been playing Battlestar Galactica Deadlock a bit here and there. I haven't gotten as much time into it as I'd like. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Battlestar Galactica Deadlock is a new game that's coming out. We'll probably post this on Wednesday, so it's coming out Thursday, and Thursday the 31st of August, and it's kind of exciting, right? Because I never thought I would hear someone having graphical issues with a Matrix Slitherine product. Generally, the issue with them is CPU, right? Because you don't think of Matrix or Slitherine games as graphically intensive, at least in terms of like how gorgeous they are, and that struck me. So I've been playing a little bit of this game, which is by an Australian developer. Do you remember? I don't remember the name, and maybe we can look it up here and mention it. But you interviewed him actually.
Black Lab Games.
Yeah, you're right, Black Lab, and you interviewed the developer, didn't you?
I interviewed the producer on the podcast Wargamers, and he's the producer for Slitherine. He's I believe on the Slitherine side, and we got to talking. It was about like an hour podcast, and it was it's an amazing story how they got the IP. But I mean it's a great game. I mean, I don't have really like graphical issues. My settings right now are on medium to high, but I'm kind of obsessed with ultra because I mean the battle stars in this game look absolutely incredible. They look like the show. I mean I could literally put a camera right in front of my computer screen and it'll look like Battlestar Galactica, the show from 2004, whatever it was. And it's an incredible, but I figure if I could put it on ultra, and I'm pretty sure your unit, your rig probably could do it on ultra. I can't even imagine the explosions and the animations that you get. It's probably 2 to 3 times probably better than a normal computer.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I've been playing it and it looks good to me, but I will say that it is a gorgeous looking game. I don't know how intensive the specs really are. I've got kind of a mid-range graphics card, and everything looks great to me, but I'm also not obsessed about playing it on Ultra either. What I will say about this game, and maybe we should back up a little bit, Battlestar Galactica Deadlock is I don't know if you'd say it's a turn-based game, right? I mean, so like combat is resolved in real time, but you issue your orders in between phases. So it's kind of like the original combat mission game, right? Like issue your orders and then watch them in real time as they're conducted. And it's a game that takes place in the first Cylon War. So for those of you non-nerds out there, if you watch the reimagined Battlestar Galactica series in 2003, I believe is when it came out, around that time period, there was a first Cylon War which took place before the series took place, and it was sort of when the Cylons, which are these robots, if you're not a Battlestar fan, think of Terminators, these machines, they rise up, they fight against the humans, and there's this big war in space, largely, between 12 humanoid colonies and these risen-up aliens which are building massive space fleets to fight against the humans and attempt to exterminate them. And there's this first Cylon War, which goes on for, is it like 30 years or so? And then
I think it's a couple of decades, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a peace, and then there's the second Cylon War, which takes place during the TV series. Well, this game is taking place during the first Cylon War. I believe it's 4 years after the war starts. And it puts you in charge of these fleets of the colonies, the 12 colonies as they're called, fighting against the Cylons. and it, in my opinion, is everything any tactical simulation space fan would ever want. I haven't seen a ton of tactical based combat games out there for space games. You see a fair number of tactical combat for land combat. There's not a ton of naval tactical combat games, but there's some. I rarely see games that are designed around tactical space combat. There's a lot of space games out there, but generally the game isn't built around the combat engine in most space games. If you look at Sins of a Solar Empire or Stellaris or any of the other strategy space games that I can think of, and I'm by no means a space games expert, but most of the space games I can think about, whether it's Star Wars like Empires at War, or again I mentioned Stellaris or other space games like that, the combat is kind of secondary to the grand strategy, and this game kind of flips that on its head. It puts the tactical combat sort of preeminent with a supporting strategy layer, but really it's all about the tactical combat in space. And I'm not as far into it as I would like. I'm not able to really issue a full-fledged review per se. I think I'm like 10 missions into the campaign, but I really enjoy it so far. It is gorgeous. It is literally, some parts of it look like it's taken out of a scene of the TV series from the early 2000s. And I think, thus far, it seems like they've done a really good job with the series, with the game. I see call outs to, I believe it was sort of the Caprica series. There's some pieces that are talking about like some industrial companies, which you hear about in the prequel TV series. So to me, it feels very much like an authentic Battlestar Galactica experience. It feels canon. It feels like it's in that universe, and it just seems like they did a great job.
I have to give big props to Slitherine and Black Lab Games because I'm a big Battlestar Galactica fan, and I watched this series over and over. Literally every couple of months, I almost go from start to finish, and I can tell you a lot of the people in the community, fans and gamers, always wanted a strategy game based on Battlestar Galactica. And, over the years, they came out with certain games. I believe they came out with a shooter. They came out with an MMO, which I think it's still even running at this point. And none of them kind of fulfilled that kind of that what we wanted out of a Battlestar Galactica game. We wanted to command, battle stars and, fight against base ships and, send Vipers in and do strategy. Because, a lot of times, when you're watching that game, you see, Dratus and you say, all right, you should send your battle stars this way. And you can't do that in the games that they made. And Slitherine and Black Lab Games stepped up and said, look, we could do a better job than anybody else that made a Battlestar Galactica game. And they did. And they used the engine that they used in their previous games, Black Lab, and it just works phenomenally well. I mean, the UI just is... I mean, it looks like they just took the shows, Dratus, whenever you see pictures of them showing the Battlestar Galactica screens on there with Dratus going on there. It looks like they took the UI, threw it on this game, putting incredible models. I think in one of my episodes, I actually looked down one of the launching pods of the Battlestar, and they actually put in lights inside the ship, right? And I just thought that was no one's actually going to zoom in this close to one of these launching pods where you launch the Raptors from. But I like that they actually went inside and actually put lights inside. So I thought that was kind of cool. I really think they did an incredible job. Honestly, this game, I racked up so many hours playing this game, skirmish mode and campaign. I didn't get as far as in the campaign because I was doing the external graphics card throughout the weekend, beating myself over the head with it. But from what I see in terms of the campaign and the skirmish mode, and the campaign especially is very attractive based upon the storyline. It seems like they could have just made any kind of storyline and said, look, we'll just make some BS storyline and put it out there. But from when I played it, it actually like immersed me into the game. I actually wanted to see what was going on in the next mission because it just got more and more interesting every time I played it. You had Doc Cottle show up, and I'm like, wait, who is this guy? And it says, Cottle on there, and and he's getting very he's almost like he's from the inner city because he's like cursing every couple of words. He's like frack you and stuff like that. So I'm like, wait, that's Doc Cottle 30 years from before the show. And I think they modeled the characters that are in the campaign perfectly because you have a couple of characters like Kane. There's this other female that's kind of is your like lieutenant. I forgot, Agathon, I believe, and she feels kind of like Agathon from the television show. So
well, and that was my question about Kane because clearly the Kane in this game is not the same Kane, right? Like it's a different first name, I believe. And she's too old to be the Kane that would be in the later Kane. But I was kind of curious if are they related at all, or is it like a mom and then the daughter's the admiral, or I don't know. It seemed like there were a lot of call outs, and I wasn't sure if they were officially like canon or just trying to make you feel like it's Battlestar Galactica because you recognize some last names.
I think honestly, that Kane is definitely. There's not any actual canon fiction on Battlestar Galactica, like a backstory or anything like that. So I'm assuming the Kane that they're talking about.
But why not?
I guess the mom of Admiral Kane from the television show, and Cottle being the actual Cottle from the television show, and Agathon. Being, I guess,
Agathon's too young. So if she's the mother, fine. But isn't Agathon? Spoiler alert! Isn't she a Cylon? So how does that work?
Wait, isn't Agathon the one that is the male guy that was her co-pilot?
Oh, I got the two confused. Okay, but Kane is way too young. I mean, she's too high a rank in this game for her to be the same Kane as actual TV series. There's no way. They're not the same character.
No, I'm assuming it's like the mother or some kind of family.
And they have a different
first
like name too. But you mentioned that there's no backstory. There's no canon backstory. Why the hell not? If Matrix and Slitherine Games can make a 300-page War in the West manual, hardcover, full color, like, god damn it, give me a fucking Battlestar Galactica manual that's like 200 pages of like canon history.
Well, I think honestly that I think they really they kind of connected it to Cap. So I didn't watch the end of Caprica. So if you guys are really big Battlestar Galactica fans, I guess like season 2 of Caprica, and I think went to like season 3. There was not too much of Caprica. So it might have been season 1 or season 2, whatever it was. But I didn't finish the last season of Caprica. And I feel like Slitherine came in right after the Silent War started, like, a couple of years after. And obviously there's little space in between there.
So you didn't watch Caprica at all because there was only one season?
No, I thought there was two seasons of Caprica because I believe I bought the first season.
One season, that's it.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I remember watching it and really enjoying it, even though like they ended up, canceling it. But I ended up enjoying it.
Yeah, you're right. There's only one season. I'm going through this thing. I guess. Hold on. I'm going through my iTunes thing. Yeah, I only got to episode 5, and that's where I stopped. And the season stopped at episode 19. Okay, so I guess if you split that season in 2, I got about almost halfway. I don't know why I stopped. It was just. It was good. It wasn't. It was all right. It wasn't, it didn't draw you in. I guess, like you mentioned Battlestar Galactica a couple episodes ago, and it kind of gave you the feel of like being on like a Navy aircraft carrier, like being on an actual ship, doing combat operations and such. Caprica had a whole different feel to it, and there was no real characters that I kind of like, I gotta see what happens to her, or I gotta see what happens to him, but, I guess they try to, I feel like they could have extended it maybe one more season and see how well it went. But
I vaguely remember enjoying the character who I think she went off to kind of join the cult and like ended up, again, spoiler alert for like a 7-year-old TV show, ended up like running the cult at the very end. She was like the friend of the main character who ended up in the machine or whatever. I don't know. It sounds really pathetic and weird when you talk about it, but
I know what you're talking about because the main, if you guys type in Caprica on like iTunes or Google Play, the main character is the girl holding the like apple in her hand or something like that.
Yeah, but anyway, I just remember finding it interesting, and it kind of drew me in toward the middle to end of the series in a way that Battlestar lost me after 3 or 4 seasons. Battlestar went all down this all weird, kooky, spiritual route. And Caprica was more focused, to me, on sort of this quasi-realism VR whatever in the run-up to the Cylons Rebellion. But anyway, this episode's not about the TV series. The game.
But,
what are your thoughts on the game?
I mean, I will have to say before, so like the one cool thing, I did like the religious aspect of it because like I wanted to know I wanted to know who that girl was, like the one with the blonde hair. I forgot the actress's name, but I wanted to know why she was showing up to Baltar, and I was just like, there's got to be something deeper into this, and the way they ended the series was incredible. So I just have to put that out there.
God damn it, it's horrible. The ending to the whole fucking series was just a train wreck and disaster. It was so fucking stupid.
On that.
It was goddamn awful. They ruined the whole last season. Like it was a train wreck. I wish I had never watched it. But moving on.
But the game, I would have to say. So I want to know your opinion about, because I mean, I think the graphics on it, and especially the ship models, like, were incredible. There's a lot of. I mean, I put in like maybe 17 or 18 hours into the game, somewhere around there, and I still look at the ship models that I've seen every time I play the game. I still get amazed about the level of detail, and just like when I have my Battlestar, facing a Cylon base ship or a Cylon, ship, and it's just pumping out artillery at it. It's just, I don't know. There's something really amazing at looking at something like that, and it's really. I mean, I wanted to get your opinion about like the graphics and just their attention to detail. I wanted to see like if you had to compare that to other games.
The visuals kind of reminded me of Total War was it Rome Total War 2, where they gave you that sort of like highlight camera where you could attach yourself to a unit and get a really good close-up of them, but you couldn't do anything with orders. I think it being a game where you issue your orders and then watch them unfold actually does a really good job of allowing you to watch and enjoy the visual spectacle. Plus, after the battles, you have this whole replay option where you can go back and review, I believe completely without fog of war, the battle as it takes place, which is, again, really awesome if you want to watch the grand pageantry and beauty of a game like this. So yes, I think they did a pretty good job with the visuals. What I will say is that during the battles, I never really found myself watching them. I thought it was a little bit clunky with the user interface, and it may just because it's sort of a 3D space game, right? Like you've got multiple planes in terms of height. You've got a wide expanse of a battlefield to try and figure out. I found it kind of difficult to follow a ship. Like you kind of have to click, and then it kind of zooms you in, but then you go free cam. Like it's a little bit odd there to me.
Did you try AutoCam? AutoCam is incredible.
I didn't try AutoCam. Maybe I should have done that. Overall, it felt really interesting, and I enjoyed the way it looked. But I didn't find myself focusing too much during orders, issuing orders on the actual visuals.
I think I every so often I replay the last mission because I just want to. There's so many ships in there, and I just want to see like how. The really cool thing I got to mention to our listeners is like they have the Battlestar Galactica from the 2000 series, the redesign by Ron Moore, and they have that Battlestar in there. She's beautiful, But they also have the 1970s Battlestar. So if you're an old fan of Battlestar and you really like the design of the old ship, it's in there. It's actually, I believe they classify it as a light Battlestar. And, both ships are incredible. And I personally, as much as I love those two Battlestars, I really love the Adamants. They have the guns that I really love when they just open fire, and they're very fast. So they have a little bit of the punch, but they're also very quick. And but honestly, if you are a Battlestar Galactica fan of the old series or the new series, I honestly feel that this game is for you. And they did this right. Like, this is, to me, I feel like this is a blockbuster game. Anybody even remotely interested in Battlestar, ever watched it and is interested in it, should buy this game. It's without a doubt, it's a must buy. I've played probably a couple dozen games this year, and games throughout the last 5-10 years, and I can tell you, there's very few games in the last 10 years that made me say, all right, I got to rush home because I got to play me some Battlestar, or I got to play this game. Battlestar is one of them. The last game I know that got me to rush home was Heart to Iron 3. That was the last game that I was like, driving home from work or whatever, the military or whatever. And I'm driving home and I'm like, shit, I really need to get home as quick as possible because I need to flank the German army. And now I need to get home because I need to kick some silent ass.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last game that made me do that. Probably Ultimate General Civil War, so not that long ago. But in general, yeah, I agree with you. Thus far, it's been interesting and enthralling. I will say that the campaign takes a little bit to get going, and I understand they kind of use the first several missions as a bit of a tutorial, which is fine. A lot of games do that. But it does feel like they're very scripted and hand-holdy for the first bit of the campaign, and then it opens up in a way that kind of, to me, feels like I lost a little bit of the immersion as I kind of get into missions 8, 9, 10, as you get a little bit further, and it feels like you get this really scripted, hand-holdy approach in the first bit because they're trying to teach you the game, and then as you get later into the campaign, it's a little bit less of that, which is fine. I don't know. I guess I haven't gotten all the way through to know how I feel about it yet, but it kind of was a little bit jarring to me in the way that it all played out.
The one cool thing I like about the campaign is, besides it being very immersive, on my review, I put in that it's very immersive because there's very few campaigns that really got me. Like, usually, like when I play Total War or something like that, it's just like when I play campaigns and on numerous games, it's just like, gosh, it feels so bland. It's kind of like, it's just a lot of times you just have to suffer through it. But this one's really amazing, and it's primarily because it kind of escalates, and I really like that it escalates. So, like in the first few missions, you run into Cylons, and it starts building on that. And I don't want to give too much away to our audience because I want you guys to actually play and buy and play the game. But by mission 8 or 9, the Cylon threat is still there and it's big, but there's a lot more stuff going on that could even eclipse the Cylon threat. Like, the 12 colonies are not as unified as you would like to think. And it brought, even like when I was playing the game, I was like, this feels almost like the United States during the time when the Articles of Confederation were in process, when the country was like almost like 13 separate states, each one having their own agenda and their own military and their own tax and their own financial stuff. It kind of feels like right there, right before we assigned the Constitution, where you have 12 separate colonies. Each one has their own little thing, and each one is like, well, you're Caprica, we hate you. You're trying to form a kind of a federal military, and we don't want to be part of it. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I could just say that things get very interesting, especially around 7 or 8. It just gets to the point where I'm not even thinking about the Cylons. I want to bring some some turrets and some missiles and some nukes against some other people that are not Cylons. So I'm just gonna leave it there. I know a lot of people are gonna say, "What is he talking about?" But played the game because for me, that mission 9, I'm kind of like, "Geez, man, this is crazy. This is insane." And I figured the Cylon threat would be the biggest threat. This is a Cylon war. I figured the Cylons would be the biggest threat. The whole campaign is going to revolve around that, and it's not. And there's so much mystery, especially involving Kane. I'm at the verge of Mission 10, and Cylons, especially, I don't know if you mentioned you played Mission 9. I got a secret message from the Cylons. I'm not going to try to spoil anything, but I was engaged in a mission, and all of a sudden a Cylon base ship showed up. So you can imagine my surprise. I'm like, oh crap, a base ship showed up. Let me launch Vipers and send everything I have against it. And there was like a representative from the base ship, a Cylon machine that was talking to me and warning me about Kane. And I was just like, okay, this added a whole different complex, whole different situation to the actual campaign. So this person that you're following, Admiral Kane, there's something else going on there. Whether the Cylons could be lying, that's a possibility. Or, maybe Kane has another agenda. Maybe, like my theories are jumping all over across the board. Inside.
Well, just to clarify, I mean, you don't even know yet, right? You haven't gotten far enough into the campaign to know where it goes.
No, I'm hoping to play Mission 10 tomorrow, the next day when it comes out, when the game's officially released. But I mean, I haven't played Mission 10 or anything beyond that, so I can tell you guys at Mission 9, I'm really like crazy about like where is this heading, and I'm assuming Adama is going to show up somewhere. And I have a feeling they're going to slip Adama in like toward the end.
He's like a Viper pilot at the time, isn't he? Or if even. He's a young Viper pilot toward the end of the first Cylon War. So I don't know if he'll show up or not.
Well, maybe he could lead some of my Viper pilots.
Maybe. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that the game, and this isn't a spoiler or anything, the game advertises this, is that it obviously you're fighting the Cylons, and I don't know where it goes. I haven't gotten quite as far as you. I'm in Mission 9. I guess I didn't get what you got yet. But what I can say is it's very clear that the game is more than just go fight this pre-scripted battle against the Cylons. I don't know how well scripted the fights are. They feel kind of scripted, but what I will say is that there's this whole political aspect involved as well. You've got 12 colonies that are fighting against this alien threat, but there are also 12 different colonies that have their own wants, their own needs. Some of them get along, some of them don't get along. Some of them maybe think the fight is worth it, some of them may not think the fight is worth it. And the game does involve politics and even fleet management and fleet building between battles. So I don't know if you want to talk at all about kind of how the between battle phases work. So, we've got these turn-based with real-time resolution battles that occur, but in between fights, there's a whole other aspect of things you have to manage. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
So basically, the in between fights, so in between your tactical combats between you and the Cylons, you have the campaign, and there's basically 4 different systems like Helios Alpha, Helios Beta, Gamma, and probably Delta. And then you have Ragnar, which is where, if you guys watch the initial episode of Battlestar, you'll see Ragnar there. But basically, in this campaign mode, you're building ships, right? And you get a certain amount of supply of I forgot the name of the chemical resource they're using. It's slipping my mind. But there's a resource that they get. I was going to say trilithium, but that's a Star Trek thing. Tilium. There you go. It's tilium. And you get certain resources from the 12 colonies, tilium being one of them. And, you build your ships with that. Now, if you don't put your ships, if the Cylons show up at Caprica and you screw Caprica, I'm going to be at Sagittarian and, And the Cylons are at Caprica. Eventually, Caprica is going to be like, all right, well, you don't give a shit about us. We're not going to give you as much Tilium as possible. And eventually, like what happened to me, they defected, which really pissed me off a little bit. And they kind of like withdrew from the 12 colony charter. So yeah, that kind of pissed me off. But anyway, you have the 12 colony. You have these four systems. Are you spoiling
stuff here? I mean, I just stepped away for whiskey, and I hear you say someone withdrew from the 12 colonies.
Well, Caprica, because I don't know if it was Caprica or another planet, but there was a few planets that I didn't send fleets to, and the Cylons showed up around those fleets, and then all of a sudden I got like a little icon around their planet and says defected, and I'm like, okay, that's not a nice word. When I think of defected, I think of the Hunt for Red October, and I'm like, okay, that's not that's not a good comparison here.
So the defectors are heroes.
When I hear defectors and I see Cylons above their planet, I'm thinking, all right, did they just defect to the Cylon side? So I'm about to launch my nukes here, So,
and I think it's worth calling out that I don't get the sense that is scripted. I get the sense that based on the decisions you make between battles on what you're going to send fleets to, what you're going to defend, that there is a sort of dynamic element there as well on how the colonies will respond. So it's almost like a mix or attempt to mix a light version of Rome Total War in with the heavier tactical combat of Rome Total War. It's not truly an empire builder. You're not going around and conquering new territories or new lands. But what you do where you deploy your fleets does have an impact, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. Primarily because you want to engage as many Cylon forces and kind of take them out before they affect your 12 colonies and your Tilium that you're getting in, because your Tilium is basically the resources that you get to build your battle stars, your adamants, which are they call them frigates. I call them mini battle stars because they are really powerful. And your other ships, your other support ships. So they're very crucial. That Tilium supply from these 12 colonies. And if you decide like, hey, you know what, screw these 12 colonies, well, that's going to kind of screw you in the end. But you have to kind of respond to threats as they come. Besides the campaign missions, you also get like side missions. I got like a freighter that needed rescuing, and then all of a sudden the Cylons. I also do want to mention something to our listeners is I really love how, and I even put this on Twitter a couple of times, that I really love the AI in this game. And the reason, and Black Lab Games and Slitherine did an amazing job with this. And I forgot which campaign mission it was, but they did. I got Carrot Thrace's freaking strategy thrown against me. If you're a big Battlestar Galactica fan, you probably are familiar with it. There was I think a joint strike force. Might have been. I'm trying to find out the name of the battle. I think it might have been the Resurrection Ship battle. But Carrot Thrace developed a strategy in one of these episodes, and which basically, you had colonial forces, FTL, Cylons send their base stars and their raiders after it. And they leave a prize behind. They're like, all right, we'll leave this important ship behind. We'll send our base ships and raiders after this colonial fleet that came in, right? And all of a sudden, in the show, you have colonial forces that FTL'd in and destroy this very sensitive, it was the Resurrection Ship, and they, destroyed it. I was on the opposite end of this strategy because in one of the campaign missions, and it's the early one, so I'll blow it for you guys. So spoiler alert, fast forward 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, whatever. Cylons FTL'd in. I had, I think freighters, or it might have been my space docks, whatever it was. So I send my entire fleet, every ship I have after these Cylons that just FTL'd in. So I send everybody out there. I send my Vipers and Raptors and Adamants and Battlestars after there. And I leave these medical ships, or what I forgot, was a medical ship or a space dock, whatever it was, and I just leave them there, figuring nothing is going to happen to them because between them and the enemy is my entire fleet. Well, guess what happens? The enemy just FTLs in and takes out my, it was my space dock. That's what it was. It was my space dock. And they just start FTLing in and attack my space dock. And it was almost end game at that point. And thankfully I was able to get my ships back to the battlefield and save my space dock, because if you put out your space dock, you can't build any more ships. You can't build your battle stars or anything like that. So, they take strategy straight from the TV series and throw it right at you. So if you're not military, if you're not like familiar with all the military strategies of the TV show, you might get your ass handed to you a little bit.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I guess I never paid attention to the military strategies in the TV series, and I've been doing okay. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool if you do see pieces taken from the show and put into the game. I think they've done a really good job with the immersion. One piece that I did have a question on, though, was do you think they did a good job with the Vipers? I kind of feel like they're a little bit overpowered. To me, it seems like fighters are too powerful, and maybe missiles and turrets are a little bit underpowered. Kind of, if I'm thinking about how the series represented, space combat, to me, it felt like the fighters were there almost in a Star Wars type environment, where their job was basically to keep enemy fighters off of the ship and to help deal with incoming missiles. They didn't really seem to have a principal role in destroying enemy fleet vessels. To me, it seemed like when there was success against the enemy fleet, it was largely due to either kinetic weapons, be it like the Pegasus main battery or the batteries on the Battlestar, or missiles via nuclear missiles or guided missiles, kinetic missiles, seem to be the principal ship-to-ship combat. And to me, it feels like the Vipers are a little bit too powerful in that regard in dealing with enemy ships.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on the Vipers, but I could see where Slytherine's coming with this in the Black Lab games, putting that much power behind the Vipers, primarily because I think they kind of engineered the Vipers to be more like fighters in World War II in terms of aircraft. The aircraft carriers themselves had like maybe one or two batteries, not much to take on a battleship or a cruiser or anything like that. The real strength of an aircraft carrier is their fighters and bombers and such. So I think they kind of engineered a little bit after that. If I have to, I don't know, looking at it and looking at the television series, when I send my Vipers out and they fight at Cylon ships, I'm kind of like mixed on that, because there are certain times I send Vipers out against Cylon ships and it takes them a while to, really break down their armor to get at their hull. And other times I send a couple of squadrons, and all of a sudden, their armor, their hull is already breaking down. So I would like to see, if I had to if I had to make a recommendation, I would probably, would like to see a little bit more of the turrets on the Battlestars, a little bit more powerful, because there's a couple of times I had like my big Battlestars, the big, battleships of the colonial fleet, and, head into the battle. And, if you're not angling the Battlestar in a certain way, like if you're sending the Battlestar front toward the Cylon fleet, the front guns of the Battlestar are not very accurate. There's a lot of times where I have my Battlestar firing its primary guns, the guns that actually do the heaviest damage, and it's shooting like on the opposite end. I'm like, dude, the ship is in front of you. Why are you firing to the left? I'm like, you're not even anywhere close. It's not even, you're not even in the same ballpark of the actual ship. And then, obviously the smaller guns that have less damage, they're more accurate. And a lot of times, I would like I would like the Battlestars to have a little bit more accuracy, I would say, on the big guns. Not a lot more, but just a little bit more. The Vipers, I'm kind of mixed on it. Sometimes they do incredible rats of damage. Other times it's, I feel like they're pecking at it. So I feel like, honestly, the Vipers are, at this point, can't have a really good conclusion on it. I feel like I'm right in the middle at this point, because sometimes some of the missions I'm like, holy crap, the Vipers took out this huge Cylon ship. Other times it just scratched the paint off the base ship, or a supporting ship. So
yeah, I mean, I guess my view is they felt a little bit overpowered. They felt a little bit too easy to just destroy enemy capital ships. I want to see a little. I don't know if accuracy is important, but I like those front main guns. I think one of my favorite parts in the series was when the Pegasus main guns were in that battle with was it the 3 base stars?
Yeah. The new Caprica battle.
Yeah, and that was kind of neat. It was interesting to see the ships fight in an anti-ship way rather than kind of a defensive way. I think it's really awesome, too, the way that you've got sort of the ability to set up like a flak barrage with your Battlestar in either, on one of the sides of it. And then you kind of have to like strategize how you're going to maneuver your fleet around and allow your Battlestar to provide that protection principally for itself, but you could use it other ways as well. But yeah, it just felt like the Vipers were all around too good. Like they destroy base stars, they destroy incoming missiles better than anything else. They destroy enemy fighters. They seem too invincible in my view, and I wish the Battlestars were a little bit more like battleships in the way that the new series kind of portrays them. With that being said, I wish I could go into a little bit more detail about the game, but I'm still diving in and enjoying it quite a bit. I'm sure I'll come back with a more formalized review once I've got some more time in it. But did you have any other closing thoughts on the game, or on your thoughts of Battlestar Galactica Deadlock?
Let's see. There's a couple of things that I would like to mention. So, besides being the best Battlestar Galactica game that has been ever made, I really love that Slitherine has ventured into this IP, and this is like a huge step. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, this is this is a great game and stuff like that, but this is a huge thing because Slitherine and Black Lab Games have ventured into an intellectual property that has been kind of almost cast away, and they're making a game out of it, and it kind of gives hope for future strategy games like Star Trek and Star Wars, and I'm hoping they go into those realms. And if this game does well, that means if our listeners, you guys listening, purchase this game, the chances of a sequel are more than likely. So you purchase this game, you're going to have an incredible experience playing it. There's going to be a stronger possibility with every purchase that there's going to be a Battlestar Galactica 2, maybe at the end of the Cylon War, maybe on the new series, and I think that's where I think this is like the beginning of a new birth for Slitherine, because going into these IPs that most companies were like, well, we don't know what kind of strategy games we want to make. Let's make it more casual. And a lot of these publishers make these really, what's the word I'm looking for? Handicapped strategy games. Good example would be Star Trek. There's a lot of developers out there. They make Star Trek games. They use the IP, and they make some really handicapped strategy games that are Star Trek games that are just like, wow, really? This is a strategy game? This is almost like 3-year-old can play this, and I'm hoping that this is kind of like the launching off point, and it's an incredible launching off point, I think.
Well, you make the point about it being, other games being handicapped. I think it's an interesting balance. I wouldn't say this game is ultra groggy. It's not difficult to jump into and figure out. They do a good job of streamlining things. It isn't a typical tablet game. I don't know if this will end up coming out on tablet or not. I thought Starhammer did, which is what this the game engine this was based off. I could be wrong there.
When I talked to David Sharrock is the producer of this game. He's a great guy, and I was talking to him, and I was asking him if there was any chance that this game would come on to iOS, to iPad or iPhone, and unfortunately, it's the devices are not there yet. Like the current iPad, if you go to Apple Store right now and you get yourself the newest iPad, that iPad probably can run this game no problem. But majority of 95% of the people that have iPads, like I have an iPad Air 2, and it's probably not going to be able to run it. And everybody else probably has an iPad 2 or iPad 3 or iPad 4, whatever it was. This game is very graphically intensive. I don't think that's going to be. He mentioned that it's not even a possible. That's not going to happen.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I mean, I guess it doesn't feel to me like a super deep war game in the way that a lot of Matrix games do. But I don't mean that in a bad way. It's definitely a tactical space combat simulation. I think it's amazing as you're kind of moving your ships around, the fact that you've got to worry about not just whether you're moving right or left, whether you're moving, to a particular place on the map, but also whether you're moving up or down. I wish I felt like the axis had a bigger influence on combat. To me, it doesn't feel like it has a huge impact. When you're at a higher plane or a lower plane, I don't feel like my combat results matter or differ all that much. It does help in maneuvering your fleet around and maintaining formation and things like that, but it doesn't feel like, I'm going to dodge a missile or incoming shells by dropping my plane and coming up around. Like, that doesn't really happen. I don't know if it should happen. I'm not an expert in space combat. I don't think anyone is, but I guess
I think I saw you around Mars. You should be an expert. I saw you.
Yeah, right. I was over by Jupiter. Actually, you mistook me for Troy Goodfellow. He was over there by Mars. But yeah. I mean, it's cool that they have that. I don't know. I guess where I'm going with this is, it's an interesting game. It's an interesting series. I hope they continue to expand on it. Obviously, I'm not in a place where I can say go out and buy this, so I hesitate. I know you're saying, hey, go out and buy this, and there will be more. Like, I hesitate personally to say that, and I'm skeptical whether this would lead to any kind of Star Trek or Star Wars franchise, as you kind of alluded to. I think those are very different series with much different audience sizes. Battlestar Galactica is almost like the war game industry of sci-fi. Like, it was big on sci-fi, but it's not a network TV show that will carry a network in the way that Star Trek could, or it's not a $1 billion movie series that's going to sell $1 billion worth of movie tickets when it comes out in theaters. With that being said, I think it's really encouraging to see Matrix sort of venture into this realm. I don't want them to abandon their war games, however, though, either. But it's really encouraging to see it. I hope it's successful for them, and I hope to see more improvements on the game. It's obviously it comes out in a few days, so by all means, I'm sure there will be tweaks and improvements. Maybe Vipers will get kind of weakened a little bit. Maybe Battlestar main batteries will be a little bit stronger or a little bit more accurate. I guess we'll find out and see as kind of we go ahead. Maybe we'll see something like Dune be captured in a game, or in a strategy game by Matrix, something like that. I think that's more in their wheelhouse, something that is really popular in sci-fi circles, but maybe not as mainstream as something like Star Wars or Star Trek. But all I can say is I'm really excited. I'm having a great time with this so far, and we'll see what else comes from this. But so far so good is kind of my initial reaction to this game.
I think with honestly the I when I was talking to David, he was mentioning that like new IPs will open up, and I've had other conversation with Slitherine. So all I can say is that there's a future that I don't want to give out too much, but it was just like there's a future in other IPs, especially with especially with the sci-fi realm, and I feel like Slitherine is a perfect company to do it because they're focused. You have the Slitherine, and then you have Matrix Games, which is also part of Slitherine. I believe this game's coming out through Slitherine, and Slitherine's more
Slytherin and Matrix games are basically one company from like an external view. Like some games they don't release with the Matrix brand, but in general, like they're the same thing.
And Matrix brand is supposed to be the hardcore, almost like Grog. How'd you say that name?
Grog.
Grognard.
Like Grognard.
Grogger. Yeah, that kind of like heavy.
I've never heard anyone say it in real life, by the way. So for all I know, I'm butchering the pronunciation, but it sounds good to me.
Probably both are. But Matrix games, from what I was told by I believe Marco, which is another great guy at Slitherine, and he was mentioning how like Matrix is supposed to be for the diehard wargamer, and Slytherine's a little bit, it's supposed to be for the wargamer, but just a little bit lighter. And I think this game is coming out through Slitherine primarily. I might be wrong, but but honestly, after playing this game for like literally almost 24 hours, I really, really love this game, and I feel like there's going to be a big future for it. Besides being the best Battlestar Galactica game, I don't know. I really think that that this is kind of like the stepping stone. This is a stepping stone for like bigger things.
I'll stop you there, Jean, though, because you always like to reach for the stars and dream of what's next. And I'm just going to say, all right, let's just sit back. Let's enjoy what we have today. Because so far, you're right. I'm enjoying everything that I've seen like so far. But it's also, let's just take a moment to enjoy the fact that there's a good again, everything I've seen so far is a good Battlestar Galactica game. It's a good tactical space combat game. And it's intriguing, and I'm excited, and we'll see what's next. But for the moment, I'm going to keep playing this. I'm going to keep enjoying it, and I'll worry about what's next later, and I'll just kind of sit back and enjoy it. What I will also say is that I think this kind of game plays another opportunity for Matrix to maybe span a little bit more mainstream. Like Battlestar is very niche within the sci-fi community, but it's an intriguing play by them because it gets them, I think, the opportunity to expose themselves a little bit to the audience that might purchase other 4X games like Stellaris or Sins of a Solar Empire through companies like Paradox, which are niche in that they focus on strategy games, but certainly as evidenced by their success as a IPO, are more mainstream than what Matrix usually caters to. And even if you look at their other space games in the past, like Distant Worlds, that was a very much Matrix groggy kind of space game, whereas this is more mainstream. And Starhammer was certainly very similar to this. This game's built on the Starhammer engine. It's made by the same developer, Black Lab Games, but it's not an IP that people know or think about, or it's not going to lure in the unsuspecting customer who never would have looked at Matrix or Slytherin in the past in the way that a Battlestar game can. I'd be really interested as sort of the business mind that I have, wondering like, what are the financials? What are the details? Like, what are they paying in licensing rights? Like, how's that all work? I always want to know that stuff. We never can find that out, nor should we have access to that. Matrix is a private company, but it still really makes me wonder, like, is this a acquisition play to try and lure people in to the Matrix Slytherin brand that have never considered it before? But that could be a whole separate podcast about kind of the strategies that different strategy game companies employ to try and expand their brand. I will leave you with this. I will say that this game is great so far. I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I'm really curious where it'll go, and I think I'm going to start streaming it on my channel here very shortly as I kind of try and play through and figure things out.
So if you had to I'm kind of curious, if you had to kind of rank this game as like out of all the games you played this year, it's we're at the end of August, so we're almost 9 months in. And out of all the games you played, where would you rank this? Top 5, I would say, or top 10, wherever you're going to rank it.
It's too early for me to do that. I need to complete the game.
You're 9 missions in. So give me your first.
I'm 9 missions in, and I feel like there might be 30 more. Like I don't get the sense that I'm even scratching the surface. I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't. So
But
for all I know, it ends on mission 12.
Where you are now, how do you feel? Because I want to get your opinion. I'm very curious because you have a very powerful sway. In terms, I value your opinion greatly. So I'm kind of trying to figure out like where you come on this.
I'm still trying to figure the game out. Everything I can see in it, I love. But I haven't gotten to the point where I think I can fairly evaluate the game. I can say that I've enjoyed all of my time in it so far. I think it is beautiful. I think it is very well done. I think the scenarios are brilliantly crafted. I think one of the things that we didn't mention before, and you kind of hinted at it, is the diversity of units. You watch the Battlestar series and you think of the combat forces as only being Battlestars. And this game has a wide variety of medium to small to heavy. I went in the wrong order there, but of units to select from, and it feels rich. I can't say if I really feel like a balanced fleet is all that important yet. I don't feel like small ships really provide a different utility than medium ships. But nonetheless, everything I've seen so far draws me in and makes me think, yes, this is the Battlestar Galactica game that I've always wanted. But again, I can't say if it's in my top 5 or even my top 10 yet because I don't have enough time in it. I probably do a disservice to this podcast not having played more than I already have going into this episode, but it's certainly worth a look. And I haven't seen... They posted the price. I don't think they have because it's not out on Steam yet. But I certainly assume it will be worth a glance for anybody who's interested in Battlestar. And yeah, they haven't posted the price yet. But nonetheless, I can't say enough good things about this without hedging for the fact that I'm not far enough into it to give it a fair shake.
So how many do you feel like how many more hours do you think you feel like that you might that you would need to give it? Do you feel like be able to in next
I haven't. Here's the other thing we didn't really. You mentioned it briefly, but there's this whole skirmish battle system where you can build fleets and kind of face them off against each other. I haven't done that at all.
Okay.
I've kind of looked around, I've glanced around it, and I've seen it. Kind of reminds me of the custom missions in Combat Mission, except for the fact that there's no real terrain builder. There's sort of pre-existing maps. Also, the game is supposed to have multiplayer at some point, isn't it?
It does have multiplayer. I went inside of it, and I was playing it during the beta, so nobody was there because, it was the beta, so
so it's not out yet.
Yeah.
I'd like to play the multiplayer. I'd like to give the skirmish a couple of hours, and frankly, I'd like to give the campaign another 2 or 3 hours before I really evaluate it. What I can say is everything I've seen so far makes me want to keep playing it, and that's about as far as I'm willing to go at this time.
Yeah, and I'm, hopefully, are you planning to release a official review on it?
I don't generally do official reviews per se. I'll do, initial impressions. And if I was to do an initial impressions thus far, it would be, this is really impressive. But I don't do a lot of really reviews per se.
I think, honestly, I'm very kind of curious to, because, when this game comes out, it's only going to come out for PC at first. So the 31st.
It is coming out on PlayStation, though, and Xbox One, I believe, as well.
Yeah, I remember they were, when I was talking to David, he was mentioning that it's not going to come out at first. So the 31st, I don't believe, if you go to...
No, not on launch day, but they did release Starhammer on PS4 and Xbox as well, so I'm sure it'll come there eventually.
Yeah, I think he mentioned a little bit later it'll come out to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And, if my gaming rig does not work by this weekend, I am probably going to have to go to a PlayStation 4. Hopefully the PlayStation 4 can max out the graphics on this game, and I could be able to show people what this game can, really do. Because I'm sure, honestly, there is no
play about the graphics, but I don't feel like it's the kind of game that is. It's not Crysis. Let's be honest. It's very good looking, and it's certainly better than any Matrix games I've ever seen before in terms of graphics, but it's not Crisis. Let's not fool ourselves.
No,
there.
but when you see a Battlestar open up its artillery batteries on the top and you just start shelling, it's just like, it's incredible. It's like, all right, so a lot of times when I watch, like the miniseries episodes or like the Battle at New Caprica or, the Battle of New Resurrection Ship, you're watching it and you're seeing these Battlestars opening a fire and all the turrets opening up. And it's just like, holy shit, that's awesome. But then when you're playing this game, it's just like you repeatedly see that all the time where you have this Battlestar just, maneuvering and all of a sudden it aims its way toward a whole Cylon fleet. And, I'm one of those kind of guys that sets up a skirmish scenario where I have one Jupiter-class Battlestar, which is the Galactica, basically, versus, 7 Cylon ships. I'm going to lose. I know I'm going to lose. But shit, that's going to look really good because this Battlestar is going to fire every single gun it has. And there are certain moments where I was, when I watch stuff like that, it's just like, holy shit, this is like the best eye candy I've ever seen in my life. It's incredible.
I've got a quick question for you. The game includes a piece where the Cylons can hack you. Has that actually influenced any battles? Like the limited number of times I've been hacked, it doesn't really seem to influence much. It says you're hacked, but I don't feel like my fleet is less effective.
There's 2 things in the game that I've kind of ignored at first, and it kicked me in the ass a little later. And people mentioned on my channel a couple of times this. So hacking, I never kind of gave it a second thought because after they initially hacked me, nothing happened. But it actually shuts down certain systems one at a time. So when CIC goes, which is kind of like where Adama would be, and once that goes, you lost the ship. The ship, I believe, explodes. So one system after another goes out. It depends on how strong the hack is and stuff like that. So
it's kind of a gradual thing where it gets worse as it goes on.
Yeah.
I guess I've always destroyed my Cylons faster than they've been able to hurt me with hacking. Yeah.
So, like, the Nemesis ships actually hack you, and I didn't notice this, but, like, your certain systems start failing, and by the time all your systems fail, CIC goes out, then your ship explodes. Another thing that I wasn't, thankfully people mention comments about is I didn't take advantage of the Z-axis. So I used to put my adamants, either above or, like, parallel to enemy ships. And a lot of reviewers are like, the adamants are better if you're a little bit lower on the Z-axis. And they were right, because a lot of times I would send adamants out, and when I put them lower, the rate of fire and the accuracy and just the hits that these mini Battlestars, these small little Galacticas, were able to inflict on the Cylon ships were a lot more, prevalent. And it's incredible. Like you were saying, you're totally right. The tactical portion of the game is where it's at. It's just the absolute beauty of seeing a freaking Battlestar just open its guns up. It's just, man.
Well, and it's good to hear you say that too, because like I was saying, like the Z-axis, to me, I didn't feel like there was much of a difference. But if there are people out there saying that it is, if you are higher or lower, there is an impact on combat, or if hacking is something that plays a role, like again, that to my point, I haven't gotten far enough into the game where that's become really readily apparent. It may be there, but I haven't felt it because I'm just not far enough in where I can still, ignore hacking because I can destroy the enemy fast enough that it doesn't really matter. I imagine that will become a bigger challenge as I get further into the campaign as the difficulty kind of ramps up.
Yeah, and I mean, as the campaigns get, and especially with skirmish mode, I always play against the odds against me. I noticed if you put Battlestars on the lower end of the spectrum, especially the main Battlestar, like the 2002 Battlestar, if you put it all the way on the bottom, the top guns is where the artillery is. There's a lot of stuff going on with that Z-axis. It comes in extremely handy because if I'm far, my Battlestar is a little bit away from the base star, right? And I'm under it, but I'm a little bit further away. The artillery kind of misses it, but it's at like optimal range. It'll be closer than if I was above it or anything like that. The top guns wouldn't be able to work at all because the bottom guns there's only two. People might correct me, but I think there's only two on the main Battlestar. So the lower you are for the main Battlestar, the better, because the top artillery can open fire. Now the thing is, the closer you get to the target, because people on my comments were like, "Dude, you need to kind of like keep your Battlestar away," and they're kind of wrong on that because if I keep my Battlestar away from the base star and keep my main top artillery that's at the top of the ship, and I go all the way on the bottom of the Z-axis, they're firing at the base star, but majority of the time it's missing. It's like, holy shit, you just missed the base star by like 5 miles, so the closer my Galactica, my Battlestar gets to the base star, there was a couple of times I was like really underneath the base star, and those artillery, which is very inaccurate. Like if you're firing from a long distance, forget about it. But if you're right underneath it, I mean, it's like it's point blank range at that point. So there's artillery piece at the top of the Battlestar. It's not going to miss this base star. And there's a couple of missions I was in where I just fracked up a base star. Like those artillery shells are just popping holes in it. And man, I can't. I just thinking about it right now. And I'm very motivated about this game, even just to play it. I think this is, I know we have different opinions on this game, but honestly, I would have to say this is like the best game that I've played in like the last 10 years. It's just, and like you were saying, it really comes down to the tactical combat. It's taking an IP that we all know and love, the space battles that we see on TV, that we're all like, holy shit, here comes the Galactica and she's going to F up some Cylon base stars. And being able to do that. And being able to command that.
Usually the Galactica got F'd up itself, but sure.
Yeah. Especially the season that you don't like to watch. She's a little like a floating garbage wreck almost at the end. She has like so many holes in her wreck. But, she's one of the ships that I fell in love with, that I would actually pay like $50, $60 or probably even $100 off like a model company. Maybe make it like a centerpiece of my living room or something like that.
I don't know about the centerpiece, but I'd get a model would be pretty cool. I mean, but, you could just go live with the cavemen and try and break the chain of history. I think that probably brings us to about the point we should probably wrap up. Suffice to say, you really enjoy Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. I enjoy everything so far, although I'm remaining a little bit hesitant to give my full seal of approval just because I haven't had enough time in it yet. With that being said, what are you drinking today? This is the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. We would be remiss if we did not discuss alcoholic beverages.
Well, I was drinking... Unfortunately, over the weekend, I was helping people move, so I was drinking whatever they brought to the move, which was Belgian beer, Stella Taurus, which was actually was okay. It wasn't too bad. And I had a couple of different IPAs, but for today, I stuck with my classic, what everybody's known, which you guys probably can't get in your local area, which is O'Connor's El Guapo, one of my favorites beers. One of my favorite IPAs. So I've been drinking that tonight, and I'm about to hit my third one. It's a good beer. There's this other bar that's in Hampton. I'm in Virginia right now, and I go to Hampton a lot, and there's this bar that had some really great IPA. It was, unfortunately, it was, they didn't have it this one time, but every time I go there, it was called Get Bent Highway IPA or something like that. It was incredible, and they just loaded hops up in it, like you were saying earlier in the pre-show. That literally just they filled it all with hops, little to no flavor. But you know what? It actually it tasted pretty good, even though that it had a shit ton of hops and little to no flavor. I was kind of actually impressed. But
good to know. I just need to grab some brewing equipment and just fill them literally to the brim with hops, and then I'll just say it's a great craft beer, and I'll make millions.
Well, you will make millions from me because I will buy a shit ton of it from you.
All right, I just need like 100. I just need like 10,000 other people like you, and I'll be all set. I've been drinking a beer called Charlatan, which is made in Chicago, Illinois. It is brewed with pride
wait. Are
in
you drinking
Chicago
a beer?
for good folk everywhere. Yes, well, sort of. I drank this a while ago. It's an American Pale Ale, which I didn't know was a thing. And it's a little bit less hoppy than I think a lot of IPAs. A little bit less bitter, has a little bit more of a citrusy kind of taste. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But I've also, during the actual show, I drank that during the pre-show. During the show, I've been drinking some Highland Park 12-year single malt scotch. So don't try and pin me with drinking beer, because I've been drinking some single malt scotch as well.
Well, for your 20th, for the 20th episode, you got to drink an IPA. It has to be.
You need to get back to some scotch, because I think it's been like episode 5 or 6 since you've actually been drinking anything but beer.
Well, you know what? How about this? For episode 20, before episode 20, you tell me what I should pick up at the local liquor store. Because, when I go there, it's very overwhelming. It's like there's so many scotches there, and it's just like, which one's a good one, which is a mid-good one, and which one is kind of like, this is something you just don't want to ever touch in your life.
Give me your price range, and I'll give you a good scotch.
Well, if it's our 20th episode, I'm willing to shout like 50, 60, maybe $70.
All right. I mean, $50 will get you kind of entry-level scotch, which is fine. There's plenty of good scotches in that price range. If you're going to stretch to like 70, you could get something a little bit nicer, depending on if that's pre or post-tax. You could get like a nice Balvenie, a solid 12-year Macallan. But there's a lot of options in that price range. If you want to really, really stretch the budget, get up to like $200 or like $300. You can get some 20-year scotches, but there's no reason to spend that much.
My friend just came back from Ireland. She just got some scotch, and she bought a brand new scotch, but it's not aged. It's like all clear and everything like that. And I forgot the manufacturer, but yeah, it's like all clear. And I was just like, isn't scotch supposed to have like an orange kind of hue to it? And she said it was just brewed like a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of like, I don't know, if I was kind of hesitant to try it because I was like, is it going to be good?
I mean, you can have a more clear scotch. I think actually sometimes one thing you got to be careful with is sometimes some scotches, it's not that uncommon for them to put like food coloring in the scotch, so they make it look like what you expect it to be. It's called, I think, like caramel number 4 or something like that, which causes it to look more like Johnny Walker uses it. So
really?
Their scotch is usually it would be much more clear, but they put a food coloring in it to make it look more like what you would expect. The goods, and I don't know if you can, I'm not a scotch expert per se, so I don't know if you can really taste that, but, like uncolored or scotches actually tend to have a little bit more of a pale, unless they're much older, have a little bit more of a pale look than you would otherwise think. Not clear by any stretch, but not quite as perfectly brown, I guess, as you would say, that you might see like a Johnny Walker have. Like Johnny Walker Red Label should not be, it's not aged very long, and it's not typically very high grade. It shouldn't be as dark as it is, but they make it look darker with a coloring. It might have a really pale look, like if it was really young scotch, I suppose. I'm not quite sure. It's interesting that it's only a few weeks old, though, because like even non-age statement scotch is usually aged for several years before they barrel it.
This one is like a new company. So like she was in Dublin, I believe, and she picked it up, and I even asked her. I said,
"Is it like Irish whiskey? Is it actually scotch?"
No, it was scotch because on the label it said scotch, and I remember asking her. I was just like, "Do you even drink scotch?" She was like, "No, I hate liquor." And I'm like, "Why did you pick it up?" She was like, "Because when you go to Ireland, you get scotch." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Do you mind if I have it?" And she was like, "No, you can have it." So
When you go to Ireland, you get Irish whiskey. When you go to Scotland, you get Scotch. But, whatever.
Hey, as long as she said, you can have it. I should have actually picked it up this week, and I was helping her move, so I should have actually probably done that. But
yeah, if you don't die from, drinking pure ethanol or something like that, let me know, and I'd be curious to hear your take on it. You can drink it on your 20th episode. I'm drinking unaged, 1 week old, clear 100% ethyl alcohol, and Gene might go blind in the podcast.
Well, since it's an audio podcast, our listeners would have no indication that would happen.
Unless you start screaming, oh my God, I can't see.
Exactly. And since the Battlestar Galactica game is just come out and not being able to see the turrets fire off, I'm going to be extremely pissed if that happens.
You did spend a lot of time talking about how pretty the game was, so you might be pretty upset.
Yes, I intend to. In fact, I'm planning to upload a video about it. The problem that I have with is I got to campaign episode 9, and I call it the game just updated to the vanilla version, which is the release version. I lost all my campaign starts, all my campaign progress. So I think tonight, or I don't know, probably maybe this weekend. Maybe I'll pick up some scotch and I have to grind through it. So pick up her clear scotch, or whatever you call it, whatever brand she has. I was gonna say Jack Daniels, but it's not Jack Daniels or.
Yeah, Jack Daniels isn't made in Ireland, so it would be odd for her to buy clear, unaged Jack Daniels in Ireland and call it scotch.
It was like a local company. I remember it started with Jack, and I forgot the name of it. But I'll have it for the next podcast. So if you guys are interested, it's a new, I guess.
It's made by Jack O'Donoghue in his backyard, and it's not really scotch, but it's Irish moonshine, for all we know.
Yeah, that's something I'll definitely pass on if that's actually the truth. Him struggling in the backyard trying to make right next to the pigs. Yeah, I'll pass on that.
All right. Well, I think that's enough of us rambling about random Irish/Scotch alcohol. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you all tuning in for episode, I believe it's 17. Is that where we're at? Yeah, 17. Yeah. Episode 17 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast, discussing Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, which is, if you're listening to this the day the podcast comes out, is coming out tomorrow. And it's by Matrix and Slitherine Games. It is made by Black Lab Games. I got that right, John?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I can't even think anymore. Anyway, guys, this is a train wreck of an ending of a podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed Single Malt Strategy once again. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching or listening. Whatever. For fuck's sake. This is a blooper reel of an ending of a podcast.
And if I could add something, if y'all can recognize where this is from, Beats, Bears, Battlestar Galactica, please put a post in the comments. I want to see how many of you guys picked that up.
Okay, well, at least we didn't get a copyright strike there. Thanks again, guys. Until next time, this is the Single Malt Strategy Podcast saying thank you for listening, and we're out.